She discovered a lost boy's path home, unexpectedly exposed as the son of a ruthless mafia boss. On a cool autumn afternoon, Sarah Thompson stepped out of her high school art room, the exhale of her breath misting in the crisp air. She was tired, her mind racing with ways to inspire her students. The town had grown weary under the weight of economic despair, but she believed in the power of art to transform lives. Little did she know, a lost boy was about to change hers. Stumbling upon Luca near the playground, his bright eyes filled with confusion struck her like a bolt. "Are you lost?" she asked, kneeling next to him. He nodded, and a jolt of dread coursed through her. The air felt heavy, thick with a tension only she seemed to perceive. She could sense danger, the kind that clung to shadows. As he spoke in shaky whispers about his home just blocks away, unease prickled at her skin. The name Rossi pierced her thoughts. Tony Rossi, the name on every wary tongue in town. Luca was his boy. Heart pounding, she fought back her rising panic. "Why did you leave?" she pressed gently, instinctively wrapping her arms around the boy. Answers spilled forth, and with each word, her mind twisted in knots. This was not just a scared child, he was the son of a notorious mafia boss, tangled in a dark family legacy. The realization burrowed deep within, churning her stomach. She was biological and ethical opposites with this child, yet a fierce urge gripped her. She needed to protect him. In the weeks that followed, Sarah immersed herself in nurturing Luca's hidden talent for art, encouraging him to paint the world through his eyes. Together, they created fantastical realms within the confines of her cluttered classroom, expansive canvases bursting with color and hope. Yet, the knowledge of who he truly was seeped into her thoughts, raising doubts about her role in his life. Could she steer him away from the legacy imprinted on his very name? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned to weeks, and just as Luca began to blossom, a storm loomed on the horizon. She felt the chill of unease as Tony Rossi appeared in town, gliding through with a cold, calculating smile, asking questions about his son. A sharp panic seized Sarah. What would happen when Tony confronted them? The stakes were rising, the boundaries of loyalty began to blur and crumble around her. She couldn't shake the visceral fear gripping her heart. Was she prepared to confront the shadowy figure embodied by the Rossi name? Now, it wasn't just her future on the line but Luca's as well. Defending him felt like standing against a tidal wave. As the shadows deepened in the art room, the ghosts of her convictions whispered haunting doubts. How could she reconcile her passion for teaching with the lengths she would go to protect the precious boy who deserved to break free from a family's grip predestined to consume him? Each brushstroke painted a fragile hope, tainted with uncertainty and fear of what lay ahead. As she looked into Luca's trusting eyes, she knew she couldn't shield him forever. What would she do when the inevitable confrontation arrived, and could she find that strength within herself to fight not only for him but their shared dreams? Sarah's heart raced as she lay awake that night, her mind tangled in anxiety. The events of the day replayed like a relentless reel of film, each frame a stark reminder of what was at stake. Luca's laughter from their art sessions echoed in her memory, a stark contrast to the looming threat of his father. With each passing moment, her determination to shield him solidified. Yet, beneath that resolve lay a gnawing sense of inadequacy. Could she truly provide Luca with a safe haven from a world so entwined with danger? She propelled herself out of bed, the cold wooden floor grounding her turbulent thoughts. The following morning, she decided to confront her growing anxiety head-on. Today, they would create a mural together, something big, bold, and unmissable. It would be a statement of freedom, an embodiment of the hope that flickered within. If only she could protect it. As the sun cast soft light through the classroom windows, Sarah began to sketch the outline on a large canvas. Luca bounded into the room, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. Sarah put on a warm smile, feeling the knot of fear ease ever so slightly. "We're going to create something extraordinary today," she announced, trying to inject the courage she was lacking into her voice. As they painted, colors splashed across the canvas, transforming their surroundings into a vibrant tapestry of visions joined by each brushstroke and shared laughter. For a brief moment, the chaos outside their sanctuary felt distant. Yet, as they painted a phoenix rising symbolically from ashes, Sarah's mind drifted back to Tony Rossi. His presence loomed like a shadow they could not escape. She found herself questioning whether the mural was a bold assertion of defiance or a reckless dance on the edge of danger. When the school bell rang, signaling the end of the day, reality reasserted itself. They stepped outside to a world that felt heavier, more oppressive than before. In the distance, she spotted Tony leaning against his black car, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses but still piercing enough to send chills down her spine. A knot formed in her stomach as he caught her gaze, an unsettling smile spreading across his face. "Is that my boy?" he called, his voice smooth yet laced with an unnerving undertone. Luca froze beside her, unsure of the man demanding his attention. Sarah's instinct was to shield Luca behind her, but the weight of his father's presence stopped her. An urge to protect surged within her, a mother bear defending her cub. "Luca's busy with art," she replied, reinforcing a boundary she hoped would keep him safe. But the way Tony's lips curled indicated that he viewed her as a mere obstacle, a fleeting annoyance. Fear skated across her mind, intertwining with resolve. Would he be so easily deterred? Part of her screamed for caution, warning against escalating the situation, while another part urged her to stand firm against the tide of darkness threatening their lives. Luca's innocent trust was palpable as he leaned closer to Sarah, the fear etched on his face making her heart ache. Something had to give. How could she stand up to this man while keeping Luca's fragile hope intact? The burden of her role settled heavily upon her. As she locked eyes with Tony, the reality hunched over her with suffocating weight. A showdown was inevitable. The question loomed: how far would she go to protect not just herself but the trust Luca placed in her? Suddenly inspired on a new level, Sarah felt the embers of courage flickering back to life within her. The time had come to face him, to truly confront the shadow looming over their artistry, unyielding until it either engulfed or liberated them. With resolve, she took a step closer, her voice unwavering. "Luca is more than just your son, he has a dream, and I will do everything in my power to help him achieve it." Determination dripped from her words, cutting through the suffocating tension. But as she stood her ground, she couldn't help but wonder, was this confrontation worth the risk, or had she just drawn the first line in a battle that could consume them both? The air hung heavy between them, taut with unspoken threats and simmering tension. Sarah could feel the sparks of confrontation radiating from Tony, his presence an oppressive weight on her chest. Could one confrontation truly alter the trajectory of their lives? She steadied her breath, squaring her shoulders in an attempt to mask the doubt flickering in her mind. Luca, oblivious to the storm brewing around them, tugged at Sarah's sleeve. "Is it okay, Miss Sarah?" His voice was small, cracking just enough to betray the anxiety he felt. It stung her to see him battle with fear through innocence. "Of course, sweetheart," she replied, her heart aching with the need to project calm. Tony's smirk widened, revealing a self-satisfaction that grated on Sarah's patience. "You think you can protect him?" he asked, his tone mocking. "Just because you paint pretty pictures?" Every word dripped with derision, fueling the fire of Sarah's determination. "They're not just pictures, Tony. They represent hope, something I know you're trying to extinguish." The moment felt electric, a surge of clarity cutting through her fear like a bolt of lightning illuminating a darkened sky. For too long, she had let anxiety dictate her actions. Now, she felt a shift within herself, a hardening of her resolve. "I know who you are," she continued, her voice steadying further with each syllable. "But I also know what you're not. You're not going to control him through fear." Tony's facade cracked slightly, a hint of menace creeping into his expression. "You're in over your head, and one day, you'll pay for that foolishness. The word struck deep, echoing in the shadows of her mind. The reality of facing someone like him terrified her, yet the idea of succumbing was more frightening. A wave of realization washed over her. This was her battle, not just for Luca but also for herself. Maybe you're right, she said, an idea taking root as she spoke. But I'm not fighting this alone. In that moment, Sarah realized she had allies: her passion for art, her bond with Luca, and the community of artists she once thought were merely acquaintances but now felt like family. The thought invigorated her. She glanced at Luca, who watched intently, his innocent belief in her abilities igniting her spirit. "We're going to create art that speaks louder than your threats, Tony," she asserted more fiercely. "Art that can't be silenced." A flicker of surprise crossed Tony's face. Perhaps he hadn't anticipated resistance this unwavering. Sarah pressed on, her mind racing. If she could expand their mural project, invite others in the community to contribute, it might evolve into something powerful, a symbol of defiance against his looming shadow. "What makes you think anyone would care?" Tony spat back, his confidence shaking slightly at her unexpected bravery. "Because they care about him," she replied, her voice unmarred by doubt now. "And they care about hope. Art has a way of binding people together, creating something greater than the sum of its parts." Luca's eyes sparkled with recognition. This was bigger than their safe space within the classroom. This was a movement. Each stroke of the brush would thicken the walls of their sanctuary, encasing their spirit in a vibrant testament to resilience. Tony recoiled, stepping back as if her words had physically struck him. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, Sarah." "Neither do you," she retorted, her heart drumming in her chest. As he turned to leave, a flicker of doubt crossed his face momentarily, revealing a glimpse of uncertainty she had never expected. Could her resolve shake him? The thought unfurled a new sense of purpose within her. In the stillness that followed, Sarah's mind buzzed with possibilities. She had embarked on an unexpected path, one of not only protecting Luca but challenging an adversary she had thought insurmountable. Her heart swelled with the notion that perhaps this was a fight she could win, sparking the courage she had long stifled. Standing beside Luca, she felt lighter, a renewed determination surged through her veins. Together, they would harness the power of art to send a message, a declaration against fear, a promise that they wouldn't bend or break under pressure. But as night fell, Sarah knew the real fight was only beginning. What lengths would she have to go to solidify their safe haven? The door had opened, and Sarah stood at the threshold. What awaited her on the other side? Would she discover allies willing to stand with them in this new battle, or would the wall of resistance prove insurmountable? The weight of the confrontation lingered in the air long after Tony departed. With each passing moment, a resolve solidified within Sarah, forming the bedrock of her determination. She glanced at Luca, whose wide, trusting eyes mirrored the flicker of bravery igniting in her chest. In that moment, she knew she was more than just his protector. She was cultivating their shared dream, the sanctuary that their art would create. Despite the daunting challenges ahead, Sarah felt a glimmer of excitement weave through her anxiety. She had an idea, one that could expand the mural project into something greater, something that could offer a beacon of hope in the face of Tony's cruelty. "Luca, would you like to help me make our project a little bigger?" she asked, her voice softening into a conspiratorial whisper. "Can we make it a rainbow?" he said, his spirit lifting as he envisioned the explosion of colors. "Absolutely," she smiled, already feeling the waves of creativity wash over her. "But we might need some help from our friends too." With renewed energy, Sarah turned toward the school courtyard, where their mural had begun to take shape. It was more than just paint on a wall, it was a community gathering point, a story waiting to unfold. She envisioned not merely a one-time project but a continuous tapestry of collaboration, one that would deeply root them in the very fabric of their surroundings. The next morning, she gathered her supplies and ventured to the local art supply store, her heart racing with purpose. Each brush stroke in her mind became a stroke of defiance, each canvas a possibility. As she perused the aisles filled with vibrant paint tubes and blank canvases, Sarah considered what it meant to invite the world into their sanctuary of creativity. "Miss Sarah," A cheerful voice shouted from behind her. It was Jenna, one of her former students turned budding artist, bright-eyed and excited. "Are you starting a new project?" "Yes," Sarah said, enthusiasm bubbling over. "We're creating a mural, but I want it to be a community effort everyone can contribute." Jenna's face lit up. "Can I help?" "Of course. This is going to be much bigger than I anticipated, and I could use all the hands I can get." Sarah felt her confidence bolster with the support of someone who understood her vision. Throughout the following week, whispers of the mural spread, drawing more students and fellow artists to her cause. Each day brought new faces, fresh stories, and diverse talents. They painted together, each individual adding their unique mark, sparking discussions about hopes, dreams, and fears. With every layer of paint, Sarah felt the boundaries of her former self dissipating. The timid artist she once was retreating into the background, making room for the fierce advocate she was becoming. But amidst the growing camaraderie, doubts crept in, a nagging realization that Tony wouldn't idly watch from the sidelines. Her heart raced as she pushed the thought away. She had too many people banking on her now. This wasn't just about art, it was a stand against the fear that sought to smother them. One evening, as twilight cast a soft glow over the half-finished mural, Sarah paused to admire the collaborative work. The colors danced against the wall, each stroke a testament to their shared strength. But even in the beauty of their creation, a shadow loomed. What if Tony tries to stop all of this? Luca asked, his brows furrowed, an edge of worry sharpening his voice. The innocence in his gaze struck a chord within her. "We'll deal with that when the time comes," she assured him, but uncertainty clawed at her insides. Just then, a figure appeared at the edge of the courtyard. Tony. He loomed there, a stark contrast to the vibrant scene behind him, the embodiment of the threat she had only glimpsed in fleeting moments before. The mural behind her pulsed with energy, yet the air thickened with tension. Sarah's heart raced. This was it, the moment would define all that she had worked for, but could she truly confront him again, this time fueled not by desperation but by her newfound strength? Would she be able to stand her ground without faltering? As he approached, Sarah's breath caught, the vivid colors of their mural juxtaposed against the undeniable darkness of his presence. The time had come to face the architect of fear head-on. What would she uncover about herself in this face-off? Would she unravel, or would she emerge victorious? The air crackled with anticipation as Tony stepped closer, his imposing figure contrasting sharply with the vibrant hues of the mural that had become a sanctuary for Sarah and her friends. Each brushstroke represented hope, camaraderie, and a defiance that, until now, had remained untested. Now, she felt the fragile threads of that hope threatened by the very person who had shattered it before. For a moment, Sarah hesitated, her mind racing through a myriad of thoughts. The emotions that had once paralyzed her now transformed into an invigorating fire. She was not merely defending a project, she was standing up for herself and for all those who had placed their faith in her. Would she allow fear to dictate her actions yet again? Could she confront the man who had sought to intimidate them all? "Sarah, is this really what you want?" Tony broke the silence, his voice oozing with condescension. He glanced at the mural, an almost mocking smile playing on his lips. "You think some paint is going to change anything? You're wasting your time." Her heart raced, but beneath the fear, a steely resolve solidified. "It's not just paint, Tony. It's a message, one of resilience and unity. You might not see it, but it means something to all of us." Each word was a pulse of courage, an assertion of her newfound strength. Tony stepped closer, invading her space with his presence. His breath was heavy with intimidation. "You really think you can take on everything I represent? You're just a teacher playing at being an artist. This world isn't as simple as you'd like it to be." Her mind swirled. A murmur of self-doubt nagged at her. Was she perhaps overstepping her boundaries? Yet she recognized the critical point of internal rebellion that was unfolding within her. She was done being a victim, she was ready to confront her reality. "Maybe you're right," she replied, her voice steadying against the tumult within her. "But at least I'm doing something. You hide behind threats and control. Being a bully doesn't require courage. Standing up for what you believe in does. Silence hung heavily in the air as Tony took a step back, surprised by the shift in her demeanor. Had she struck a nerve? For a fleeting moment, it seemed as if the darkness of his shadow flickered uncertainly. Who do you think will back you? He spat out, desperation creeping into his tone. You think a couple of kids throwing color on a wall will stop me? Sarah drew a deep breath, feeling the font of emotions coursing through her. I have more support than you realize, and our voices will be heard. We're not afraid of you anymore. Her words were laden with conviction, a stark reminder of the community that had linked arms around their artistic expression, but beneath her newfound bravery, one thought lingered: what if he retaliated? What would happen to them then? The fears that struck her earlier threatened to resurface. Yet, she knew now she could not let them control her. Luca and the others depended on her. You think you can scare us into silence, but we're here, she affirmed, her voice rising with the realization that their mural grew larger than fear, it grew with unity. In that moment, something shifted. Instead of turning back, Sarah felt as if she was beginning to emerge not just as a protector but as a leader. She was finally finding her voice and strength amid the chaos, stepping away from the shadows Tony cast over her. Yet, as Tony's expression hardened, the tension in the courtyard escalated. She could feel the eyes of her supporters behind her, each gaze assessing, waiting for her next move. The looming shadow of Tony had transformed into a catalyst for her growth. As he nodded slowly, a dark smile returning to his lips, Sarah's heart sank at the realization, this confrontation hadn't reached its conclusion. We'll see how long your little mural lasts, he growled, before turning sharply and striding away. The threat hung in the air like an uninvited specter, leaving a hollow ache in her chest. But something profound had happened within her, a shift that carved a path toward potential. Would she choose to pursue this newfound strength, or would Tony find a way to dismantle it? As she turned back to the mural, her doubts tempered by determination, she was faced with a pressing decision. Would she fortify her resolve and lead her group through the challenges that loomed ahead? Or would she allow Tony's intimidation to stifle the vibrant expression they had nurtured together? With the colors of the mural shining brightly in the waning light, Sarah stood at a crossroad, aware that each choice she made could ripple through her and those she sought to inspire. The confrontation had unearthed something within her, a strength that might just carry her through the trials to come. The path forward was uncertain, but the urgency to act beckoned her toward a deeper understanding of herself. What would it mean to elevate her courage beyond the mural, she pondered, as the shadows of doubt flickered, urging her to confront not just Tony, but also the fears that had long held her captive. What would unfold next? With the vibrant colors of the mural illuminating the evening sky, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose coursing through her veins. The tension of her confrontation with Tony transformed her fears into a wellspring of determination. She was no longer just a teacher baffled by adversity, she was becoming a leader forged in the fires of conflict, but confronting Tony had unearthed deeper questions within her. Could she wield this energy to make a real difference, or was it merely a momentary high? The people gathered around the mural, her friends, her students, watched her every move, their faith resting on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. The stakes had escalated, and she was uncomfortably aware that any decision she made would ripple far beyond this single encounter. Listen up, everyone, she called out, her voice breaking through the murmurs of uncertainty. We've got to reinforce what this mural represents. It's not just about the art, it's about our voices being heard, and that includes planning for what happens next. The faces before her reflected a mix of confusion and eagerness. They were compelled by her resolve, yet Sarah sensed hesitation. For them, as much as for herself, a plan needed to emerge, a structure woven with intent and purpose. As they gathered closer, the familiar warmth of camaraderie began to settle around her. She took a breath, her heart racing as she pushed aside the last vestiges of self-doubt. I want to organize meetings, workshops, anything we need to amplify our message. Together, we can create something powerful, she declared, her pulse quickening with each word. Ideas began to flow, perhaps a series of art sessions to engage the community, discussion panels that could lift their narratives above the noise of intimidation. As her peers spoke, Sarah felt again that burst of inspiration. It was as if each suggestion sparked a new color on the mural waiting to be unveiled. This was not simply about fighting against adversity anymore, it was about building something beautiful and meaningful, yet, in her heart, a shadow lingered. The threat of Tony's possible retaliation haunted her thoughts. Would he try to dismantle their efforts? Would he push back with even more aggression? The ramifications of failing to prepare weighed heavily on her mind. Her friends noticed her hesitation and urged her to stay focused on their vision. "Sarah, you can do this. We believe in you," Lucas said, the sincerity in his voice wrapping around her like a reassuring embrace, but doubt clawed at her again. What if this newfound leadership placed them all in danger? The image of Tony's dark smile haunted her. She grappled with the fear of what it meant to commit, to fully invest in this cause when the threat of hostility loomed so large. As the meeting progressed, she took her allies' concerns to heart, balancing between the excitement of ambition and the caution of potential fallout. Discomfort sparked her introspection. She had to confront her own motivations. Was she truly ready to uphold this mantle, and was it possible to keep them safe while pursuing their vision? "I need to figure out how to ensure everyone is protected," she muttered under her breath. "I've got to establish boundaries." But how could she impose limits on the very passion that sparked their creativity? In the days that followed, Sarah immersed herself in planning. She devised flyers, promoted discussions, and built a network of advocates who shared their experiences and dreams. Her leadership took shape as she attracted those eager to join her cause. She was awakening a side of herself that had laid dormant, and every small success spurred her forward. Yet each night she returned to her thoughts on Tony, that looming threat remained. His presence was a constant reminder of her past vulnerability. One evening, after another successful workshop, a message lit up her phone. It was an anonymous text: "I know where you and your little project are heading. Consider this your warning." Staring at the screen, Sarah felt ice water course through her veins. This was no longer just about art. This was a battle for her identity, her resolve, and possibly her safety. But beneath the panic and fear was a whisper of defiance. "They can't intimidate us." Not anymore, she vowed aloud, her grip on the phone tightening as she made her decision. The moment had arrived to choose: continue her personal journey of growth or give in to the darkness that pursued them. As she prepared to respond to the looming threat, Sarah realized that she was on the precipice of something monumental. The path ahead became clearer, though the dangers deepened. Would her pursuit of growth lead her into a world of shadows, or would it illuminate a new purpose? The time had come for an ultimate confrontation. How far was she willing to go to protect what she had created? The weight of the message lingered in Sarah's mind like an anchor. Panic and indignation twirled within her, but clarity began to emerge amid the chaos. The anonymous warning was more than a threat, it was a challenge. What had once felt like vulnerability was now sparking a primal urge within her, the need to fight back, to assert control. She paced her small living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows against the walls. The whispers of doubt really were getting too loud. Was she truly willing to gamble with not only her safety but also the safety of those she cared about? Tony's shadow loomed large, a specter waiting in the dark. Yet, the pulse of her desire to lead resonated deeper. If she backed down now, would she ever find her way back? Resolutely, she grabbed a blank sheet of paper and a pen. One by one, she wrote down her thoughts, structured them into coherent plans. It became a canvas for her strategy where fear could turn into something actionable. The scribbled words felt potent, she was taking back her narrative. First, she needed to reinforce communication. An anonymous threat book became essential. Every encounter, every suspicious glance would be documented, which would make their networking stronger. A solid foundation would work as armor against Tony's intimidation. Then came the need for discretion. Not all could be trusted, and making sure her allies remained vigilant was critical. As the night deepened, she transformed her fears into actionable goals. Workshops morphed into training sessions, a way to fortify her small community through storytelling and self-defense tips. Art had the power to heal, but knowledge could protect. Blending the two became her mission. Plans jotted down filled the paper, but she needed a more structured approach. What if she contacted local authorities discreetly? There was strength in numbers, and establishing a connection could provide a safety net. Caution set in, but with it came the realization that every decision reflected a piece of her developing character. Sarah was no longer merely reacting, she was actively shaping her future. After pulling an all-nighter planning, fatigue settled in, but excitement crept in tandem. She felt buoyant, a tightly coiled spring, ready to strike. Yet uncertainty nagged at her as she pictured her friends' faces, vivid reminders of why she had dared to lead. Were they ready for this new reality? Beneath fervor dwelled a deep-seated worry. Could the actions she took now affect their lives in ways she could not foresee? Her determination was unwavering, yet the stakes felt monumental. How would she unify their collective energy without igniting unnecessary risk? Her thoughts spiraled, each idea generating yet more questions she felt unequipped to answer. The morning came, bringing with it a sense of urgency. Fueled by resolve, Sarah reached out to her allies. "We need to gather at the mural tonight," she texted, urging them to prepare for a meeting that would shift the course of their narrative. She emphasized the importance of rallying, of collective strength. Perhaps they could brainstorm safeguards together and explore the opportunities that lay ahead. In unison, they could fortify one another against the darkness threatening to close in on them. To her surprise, replies from her friends buzzed in almost instantly. Words spilled onto the screen that breathed optimism into her anxious heart. They were ready, whatever the cost. As she closed her laptop, a fleeting shadow passed through her mind, the delicate balance between courage and recklessness. Would she be prepared for what could unfold after tonight? The exhilaration of potential victory intertwined with the haunting resonance of doubt, propelling her to rise above her circumstances even more fiercely. But just as confidence surged, another message appeared, this time in the form of a simple pop-up notification that made her breath hitch. "You really think you can take me on?" It read, signed with a single initial, T. In that moment, Sarah realized she was not just preparing a movement, she was about to initiate a high-stakes game with an unseen player, and this wouldn't end without consequences. How could she fight against an unseen enemy with no clear path laid out before her? With blood pounding in her ears, she understood, a direct confrontation was not merely inevitable, it had become essential. But was she truly ready to confront Tony's wrath head-on, knowing that her leadership could put everyone at further risk? The battlefield she was entering was murky, and as she gathered her thoughts, the lines between self-preservation and her dreams blurred. Each moment ticking by heightened the reality that the next step could determine everything. How far would she go to secure her identity against the threat, and how deep would the fallout reach? Sarah's mind raced as she processed Tony's challenge. The words didn't just pierce her, they ignited a furious determination deep within her. She was standing on a precipice, on the threshold of her own evolution. But standing wasn't enough anymore, she needed to leap. Nerves taut, she stepped away from the desk and breathed deeply, grounding herself. Fear whispered that she was outmatched. Yet another whisper, stronger and clearer, reminded her that inaction was a choice, one that could lead to cowardice. Could she afford the price of silence, especially now that they were under threat? She thought of her friends, the trust they placed in her. With a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah took the time to outline specific roles for her friends. Delegation was as foreign to her as it was vital. This wasn't just about her whims anymore, it was a team effort. After jotting her ideas down, she glanced at the clock. Hours had slipped by, absorbed in the swell of her thoughts, and she needed to act swiftly. As she arranged to meet her allies, she envisioned her role shifting from quiet observer to assertive leader. The prospect terrified her, but the fear felt like a companion, one she had chosen to embrace rather than avoid. Each person she contacted responded with enthusiasm, echoing her urgent intent. They were being called to the front lines, but Sarah recognized the inherent risk that accompanied their gathering. The mural stood tall, a vibrant canvas of hope, yet tonight it served as the potential battleground against shadows that haunted her. She pulled her jacket closer against the night chill, her breath visible in the crisp air. Under the streetlight, familiar faces began to gather, their expressions a mix of readiness and unease. "Hey everyone, thank you for coming," she said, her voice steady yet soft, embodying the duality of her feelings. She made eye contact with each member of her circle. Loyalty radiated from the few silhouettes that lingered in the dark. "We're at a crucial crossroads. The threat is real, and we need to be proactive." She launched into her plans, explaining her vision both for documenting encounters and for bolstering their community's capacity to defend themselves. As she spoke, uneasiness transformed into vigor. They rapidly formulated ideas and volunteered for responsibilities, lending her the strength she didn't know she had. But even amidst the planning, an intuition persisted, warning her that this confrontation was more than she anticipated. It wasn't just strategic, it was personal. Every face surrounding her mirrored her own concerns, a tapestry woven from shared struggles. The weight of responsibility hung heavily on her shoulders. Did they fully grasp the danger? An idea surfaced, sudden and bright. What about a code? Something simple, a word or gesture that we can use if any of us feel threatened. A sense of urgency enveloped them, they agreed, devising a basic but effective system. Lightness sprouted against the heaviness of their situation. Planning had its cathartic moments, yet a nagging fear lingered. At what point would they cross from empowerment into recklessness? As the meeting wrapped, each member of the group was personifying newfound determination. Yet before they departed, she caught sight of something out of the corner of her eye. A figure, the familiar silhouette of Tony, stood further down the street, the distance between them blocking his expression but amplifying her dread. Her heart raced, her breath quickened. She turned to her friends, swallowing hard. "We need to go," she insisted, hoping to usher them home before any confrontation boiled over. But as she moved away from the mural, uncertainty surged once again. It wasn't just about evading threats anymore. How could she direct this energy? As her thoughts whirled, another part of her mused perhaps change lay not in merely confronting Tony, but in understanding the dark force threatening them. In that moment, the line between fear and action blurred further. What if uncovering Tony's true connections could give her the upper hand? The realization sparked between her nerves and resolve she needed to do more than shield herself from the shadows, she needed to delve into their origins. Could unearthing Tony's vulnerabilities shift the tide in her favor? Was she prepared to dive into the very darkness she sought to combat? The night loomed ahead, heavy with questions, propelling her once more toward a darkness she was determined to shed light upon. Would the truth be her weapon or her downfall? With the echo of her own heartbeat loud in her ears, Sarah led her friends away, their chatter fading as they walked into the dimly lit streets. The meeting had calmed her nerves, but the image of Tony lurking nearby gnawed at her gut. She could almost feel his eyes boring into her. Yet there was a new resolve in her, the shadows no longer seemed to loom independently. They were intricately interwoven with her own choices and aspirations. Once home, she paced her small living room, the walls closing in, her mind rattling off plans and ideas like an old train engine trying to build steam. She thought about everything Tony represented, the weight of his influence, and the possibility that he was more than just a neighborhood threat. He was a player in a larger game, one characterized by undercurrents she had remained blind to until now. What if she could leverage his weaknesses? What if she could turn that power back against him? The thought sent shivers down her spine, yet exhilaration intertwined with the fear. It was addictive. With a determined flick of her wrist, she grabbed her notepad. The planning was more than strategic now, it was deeply personal. She began listing down everything she knew about Tony, his habits, the people he interacted with, the places he frequented. Her adrenaline surged as ideas flowed through her fingertips, then a revelation hit her hard. Sarah realized she had always painted herself as the victim in situations like these, but it was time to change the narrative. She could be the strategist, an architect of her own circumstances instead of a pawn in someone else's game. The realization offered a strange kind of freedom. She was not simply fighting against Tony, but actively shaping her own fate, her eyes fell upon her phone, and the desire to connect with her friend sparked an idea. They were allies, yet she had kept an emotional distance. Sarah needed to share this newfound clarity and make them also understand the bigger picture. They weren't just standing in defense, they needed to build a strategy, go on the offense. She sent a message to her most trusted friend, Mia, who had always seemed to linger in the shadows of Sarah's thoughts. Mia would appreciate the urgency. "We need to meet. I have ideas," was all Sarah wrote, but she felt the weight of anticipation hang in the air, crackling like electricity. As minutes ticked painfully by, her mind drifted back to confrontation. If she wanted to understand Tony's connections, it would require research that was less about digging and more about observation. Perhaps he had routines, places he visited without thinking. Her resolve sharpened. She would blend in, subtly immersing herself in his world. When Mia arrived, there was a look of concern mixed with curiosity on her face. "You seemed different on the call. What is going on?" "Something clicked after our meeting," Sarah admitted, pacing again. "This is bigger than just a group trying to stand up against Tony. It's about understanding him, how he operates." Mia nodded thoughtfully, absorbing the mantle of Sarah's evolving mindset. "You mean to take control by knowing our enemy?" "Exactly," Sarah responded, her excitement bubbling. "But it's not just about him. It's about us operating from a position of strength, echoing visible action through careful intelligence." Mia's eyes lit up. "So we're going to turn him into prey instead of us being the hunted?" Sarah smiled, the corners of her lips curling with a newfound confidence. "In a matter of speaking, yes. And it starts with building our knowledge base." However, the thrill of her decision gnawed at her, sending ripples of doubt. Was she stepping too far into his realm, risking her safety for the sake of information? The question lingered, misting over her excitement. "Just remember, Sarah," Mia said, breaking her reverie, "understanding him won't be easy. You may uncover things you're not ready to face. I'm willing to risk it. We've already lost too much. I can't afford to lose us more." That flicker of determination fueled them. The night deepened outside, and Sarah felt the layers of midnight wrap around her, thick and entrapping. The very darkness she wanted to unravel was now her map. But a nagging thought lingered: would the truth she uncovered strengthen her resolve, or shatter the very foundation of her burgeoning leadership? As she prepared for the unknown, Sarah wondered if her journey had only begun. Would this new realm of understanding bring her closer to their shadows, or plunge her deeper into chaos? With every tick of the clock, the sanctity of her intentions collided with the raw unpredictability of their reality. And as dawn threatened to unveil its secrets, Sarah's transformative path toward the truth began. How far was she willing to delve into darkness if it meant learning just how deep the roots of Tony's power ran? As dawn broke over the horizon, Sarah felt a palpable shift within herself. The adrenaline from the night before had driven her to new heights of resolve, and now clarity settled like the morning sun across her intentions. She was no longer merely an art teacher harboring a lost boy but a steadfast leader prepared to wield knowledge as her weapon. The urgency of her mission crystallized. It was time to transition from mere survival to a proactive strategy against the looming threat of Tony Rossi. Over the next few days, Sarah dedicated herself to assembling a small team of her most trusted allies, crafting a plan that blended community engagement with careful observation. They would become both artists and analysts, transforming their mural into a vibrant declaration of hope while simultaneously gathering the intelligence needed to understand Tony's operations better. She felt the stir of underlying strength building as each person on her team shared insights, donating their unique skills to the cause. Empowered by their unity, Sarah organized late-night painting sessions after school, allowing the mural to blossom with layers of rich color and meaning. With Luca's fiery spirit fueling her creativity, they painted symbols of courage and resilience. Each stroke became a manifestation of their shared commitment to overcoming fear, each splash of paint a reflection of their desire to break free from the confines of Tony's shadow. Yet Sarah did not forget her mission. Under the guise of community pride, she began to weave in her observation work, monitoring Tony's activities in the community with the clandestine help of her friends. They became adept at recording his interactions, gathering insights about his affiliations, uncovering more about the hidden puppetry that he orchestrated in the town. The fear that had once anchored her morphed into an exhilarating experience of empowerment, a form of defiance against oppression. The culmination of their efforts came together when they hosted an open art day, inviting not only students but community members to come and contribute to the mural. As vibrant pigments mixed under the sun, a sense of solidarity enveloped them all. Their mural evolved into a living testament against fear. They stood united not just as artists resisting one man, but as a community sharing collective dreams and fears. Each participant painted their story, creating a multi-layered tapestry that would echo in hallways long after the completion of their effort. As they painted during the final session, the task bore significance beyond aesthetics. It became a powerful symbolic act of reclaiming their identities. The looming presence of Tony faded momentarily as the air hummed with laughter and community spirit. Even as shadows lurked at the edge, she felt an unshakable confidence burgeon within her. She had transformed from a passive figure in her own life to an architect of change, resiliently crafting her destiny alongside her friends. Yet as the final touches graced the mural, a majestic phoenix rising from the ashes, Sarah sensed that the confrontation was still on the horizon. The mural's unveiling had sent waves of defiance through the town, and it was only a matter of time before Tony could retaliate against the unity she had nurtured. Weeks later, just as anticipated, Tony made an appearance at the art day. His shadow stretched across the thriving sea of color, a cacophony of bright and dark clashing in the air. But this time, Sarah was prepared. As he approached, casting a menacing gaze over the throng gathered around the mural, Sarah felt a stillness wash over her. The whispers of doubt had quieted, and the warmth of her companions filled her heart. "Impressive work, Sarah," Tony drawled, a self-satisfied smirk on his face. "But you don't think this can really stand against me, do you?" Her breath steadied, and the empowerment she nurtured rose into her voice. "These colors represent hope, a hope you can't extinguish, no matter how hard you try. This community stands together because of art, because of sharing our stories. You've underestimated us." Tony's composure faltered for just a fleeting moment, his mask slipping. The community rallied around her words, signals of solidarity sparking as they, too, stepped closer, embodying the strength of their shared narrative. Sarah felt a surge of affirmation. This wasn't just a confrontation against Tony, but a powerful assertion of their right to exist freely. "Your threats are hollow," she continued, each word sharper now, wielding confidence she never knew she possessed. "We've built something you can't break." The tension snapped as bravado collided with conviction. For once, Tony found himself standing before something more powerful than his intimidation and unwavering resolve, packed with the energy of a united community. In that moment, Sarah realized she had not only conquered the fear that once defined her, she had embraced her truth, assured of her capability to carve a path forward. She had transformed from a protector of a lost boy into a leader, a conduit for hope, capable of standing firm against the darkest shadows. As Tony faced her, she saw the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Maybe, just maybe, she understood something vital. The real battle lay not in force, but in soul, and she had conquered her fears. With a firm resolution and a heart brimming with confidence, Sarah smiled at Luca before turning back to face Tony entirely. In this moment of authenticity, she had discovered her truest self, ready to embrace the bright future her artistry had begun to illuminate together with a community that had risen from despair into vibrant life. This was just the beginning, and she thrived on every moment. Now is the time to take action. Subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm, ensuring more stories of triumph reach those who need them. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this empowering conclusion. You need to show your support now. Don't wait even one more second.